Good evening. My name is Kristen Vidal, and I'm the Finance Committee Chair for Stratford Public Schools. And I'll call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. on January 10th, 2024. We do have a quorum, and we will begin our agenda with the acceptance of the minutes of our last meeting, November 27th, 2023.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Can I abstain?
Of course. So one abstain, sure. So since we are a newly formed committee, I thought we'd take a few minutes to introduce ourselves to everybody in the room and at home. Mr. Pia, would you like to start?
Sure. Is there one? No, that's right. Talking to there. I've never had a meeting here. Good afternoon, good evening. My name's Chris Pia. First time on the Board of Ed on the East Broadway side, so thank you. And I'm looking forward to working together on this budget. And Heather, it's nice to have you on board, and thank you for everything you've done so far. So thank you.
Ms. Lynn?
Susan Lance. I'm not new to this committee. I've been on this committee. I was on the board, I was elected to the board 8 years ago, and then 4 years ago I was asked to be on the committee. I'm proud to be still serving for the students in Stratford. I've lived in Stratford my whole life. My husband and I were both teachers, retired, and raised 4 children here, and they're all teachers in the state of Connecticut, so education's important to us.
Ben Brannion, all 3 of my kids attended Stratford High for those K-12, and currently I work for another community in Connecticut, but I once was working for Stratford Board of Ed as Chief Operating Officer, so it's interesting to be on this side, but I look forward to trying to get back.
Welcome.
Would you like me to?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Tammy Angini. I'm the Chief Operating Officer currently, and I am thrilled to have Ben join us as a colleague and as a committee member. But I am very happy to be here to support the board in this committee.
Great.
Bill O'Brien, transitioning like Chris Pia from 6 years on the council to the Board of Ed, and I'm looking forward to a good 4 years of a lot of progress.
Lisa Carol Fabian, this is my 3rd year, starting my 3rd year on the Board of Ed. I'm a former Stratford teacher of 11 years, currently teaching in another district for the last 13, lifelong Stratford resident and mother to 2 Stratford public school students.
Mike Henrik, board chair, back for 2 more years. 4 of our 5 kids attended Stratford schools, all graduated thankfully, and all have moved out. So I got time to do this. Anyway, look forward to another 2 years and looking forward to the progress we can make.
I'm Sean Kennedy, going on 3 years on the Board of Ed, so I'm excited to have you working with everyone. Lifelong resident, attended Stratford Public Schools.
Chris Cormier, first year on the Board of Education. I'm a teacher in the district next door. I have 4 children in the district, and we've been here almost 20 years. So.
Hi, I'm Jill D'Angelo Powers, first year on the board. I have 2 young children here in schools in Stratford, and look forward to working with all of you.
Yep.
And I'm Heather Borges. I'm currently the acting superintendent and also the director of pupil services. Great, and I'm very happy to be here. This is my 12th year in Stratford.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'm glad we are all here, and thank you for introducing yourselves. Moving right along, we have some items for discussion, and the first item on the agenda is the 2024-2025 budget process and schedule. In the packet that was in front of you, you will see the budget calendar and what has transpired up to this point. and what will transpire in the coming months. And I'm gonna let Pam kind of go over the schedule.
Absolutely. The first document that you have is the budget calendar, and that provides you with an overview of the entire budget process. As it reflects, we actually begin in early October. We actually begin looking at numbers probably in July, but we do ask these schools to begin their process later in the month of October, and at the same time, we're working on the capital budget. Then we have all documents and requests due to my office to review with the superintendent at the end of November, and we have meetings with schools to review their requests and to try to understand the nuances of what they're asking for. We did something a little bit differently this year because we realized that we were facing this fiscal cliff. The ESSER dollars, obviously, as you will know, because I have been saying it repeatedly for quite some time, are going away, and we are concerned about how we're going to maintain status quo and at the same time present to you a fiscally responsible plan. Nevertheless, we did ask schools to please not increase their line items within the ALEO request, and ALEO is our financial software program. So what we did was ask them to do a separate form explaining why they needed to increase, and some were very reasonable costs to simply increase, and to remain status quo, we did have to increase some of those accounts. So that was one of the changes this year, and of course there's a number of new initiatives that they also submit separately, and that is something that we have met with them to try to understand their needs as well. From there, we work to pare down what we think we can move forward or should move forward. We're always looking to repurpose dollars. We've done a lot of that over the last couple of years, looking at programs and positions and other resources to make certain that we are getting the most out of our budget dollars. From there, we put the budget together, and that's pretty much the process that we're in right now. We are tweaking numbers. We're trying to get some firm or more firm estimates on things. Health insurance is a prime example of that. We struggle with that number because we get a high number and then we start our negotiation with the through the broker to try to pare that down a bit. But there's many things that we have to tighten throughout the month of January. And we put it together to present to the board on February 5th. And then we spend a lot of quality time together with all of you throughout the month of February through budget workshops. From that point, we do have to have our budget for the Board of Ed approved by the end of February because we do need to send it to the town by the first week in March. And then through March and April, the council is conducting their review of the mayor's proposed budget. The Board of Ed budget workshop with the town council is usually mid-April. And the town council adopts the fiscal 24-25 budget by the date within their policy, and I believe that's May 12th this year. And of course, the board has to adopt its final budget by June 30th, hopefully way before that. But that is the schedule, and behind that is the budget workshop calendar, which is posted on our website. We encourage, obviously, the public to attend to understand the nuances of our budget, the details that we'll present. And as we have in the past, we've set up the workshops so that you are going to be really concentrating on certain areas each evening so that we can stay focused on those areas, provide you with all the information possible, and of course, answer all the questions you have at that point. Hopefully that overview is helpful. If there's any questions, suggestions along the way, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm more than happy to talk about it.
Are there any questions to start for Ms. Mangini? About the calendar or anything upcoming or what to expect? No?
I will just add that you will be getting a full notebook, book that is by, I prefer to present it by object code, and we've talked about this to those of you who have been on the board, and for those of you that are new, there are many ways to look at our budget, but I do feel that object is probably the easiest to follow for most people. So it will be set up that way, and you will certainly have that notebook and plenty of time to look at and prepare for the budget workshop.
Okay. If there's no questions, we can move to the next item, which is budget transfers, which is the typical item in the finance budget. But I don't believe there are any transfer requests this month, correct? Okay. Moving right along, financial reports. I guess we can turn it back over to Pam to kind of give us a status of what's going on at this point in the year.
I'd first like to just comment that I appreciate your patience with us this time since the committee meeting dates changed. Normally, you will get this information in advance to review, so you can be prepared and answer any, ask any questions, and I'm happy to answer them. And I also encourage you, if you do have questions prior to the meeting, sometimes we can just have a quick conversation, and it could just be for clarification, particularly those of you who are just kind of getting used to digesting what we're presenting to you. But the monthly financial report currently reflects a available balance of $10,752,757. Again, that it's early in the fiscal year. Most of our major expenditures, such as payroll, are encumbered, but there's plenty of costs that are not encumbered, such as utilities, and just other areas of the budget. So obviously, we don't have $10.7 million available at this point, which is why I do provide you with a narrative report as well, and that's a few pages beyond it. And what I tried to do with this report is just give you an overview of what we are estimating in those accounts that are either going to provide you with a significant potential year-end balance or a deficit. So I will walk you through this right now. Salaries, we are projecting a balance of a little under $500,000. That is primarily due to non-certified vacancies. And in the certified personnel side, we've had a lot of movement, people coming and going. Most of the positions at this point, though, are filled. I think we might have 2 that are not, and they are kind of high cost. But I want to emphasize that this is a snapshot, a point in time, and this is what we're estimating through December. So if these positions remain unfilled, each month these numbers grow, obviously. But non-certified, that's our custodian, secretary positions, obviously, that don't require state certification. We have had a lot of movement. We've had a lot of movement with custodians, and what happens is there will oftentimes be a period of time where no one is in a position and there's a savings. And as you know, sadly, we have lost a couple of our employees over the last few months, again, struggling to fill those positions. And we've had a lot of movement with our custodians. So for all those reasons, there are savings there. Needless to say, when you have savings for personnel, you're going to have a corresponding savings for benefits, health insurance, employer tax, and defined contributions, defined benefit contributions. So again, we're estimating $275,000 in benefits. And then we get down to the 500 object code, which is other purchase services, and that covers both special ed and regular ed tuition, as well as transportation. And we have had quite a bit of movement with our special education population. As you can see, between out-of-district tuitions and transportation costs, we are currently projecting a deficit of $859,000. Very concerning, obviously. We do our best to budget for known costs when we set the budget, but as we have shared in the past, we do have a rather transient population in Stratford. We have registration, it's ongoing, and I always share this story. I've been here now, I'm going into my 4th year, and Ms. Borges shared with me early on that registration never stops. I really thought she was wrong. She wasn't. It never stops. So it's different from other districts I've been with, but what happens, obviously, is many times students are identified as special education, or they come in with an out-of-district placement already. So this is fluid, it continues to change, and we will continue to update you. With the savings in salaries and benefits, we are actually, you will see, really walking a line right now. We can breathe slightly, but we are watching this very carefully. We are anticipating a small year-end balance in our 600 object code, and that's primarily due to some savings in our bid price for fuel oil, for gasoline and diesel fuel. The town went out to bid, and while it increased for regular gasoline, it decreased for diesel. And since we use mostly diesel for the school buses, we do anticipate a savings. And lastly, the largest bit there is, not the largest, but that large amount of $95,000 is really totally unexpected. We were told that in our year 5 of the 21st Century Grant that we had to budget and we had to match for the state 50% of that total. We budgeted accordingly last year, which amounted to $190,000. We have been advised, because the state does have money available, that they're actually going to award us, and they have, 75% of that grant, which means we have a $95,000 savings. And that couldn't have come in a better time because, as you can see, my total balance I'm projecting is slightly under $16,000. Again, those of you who know me, these are very conservative numbers. I just like to take this slow and assume that our textbook accounts and our supply accounts and our utility accounts, for the most part, will continue to watch them carefully, but that they will all be spent down. So each month that goes by, particularly with utilities, and we get through winter months, I will certainly be giving you tighter projections at that point. I know that's a lot of information, but I know some of you are new, so I just wanted to make certain that I'm making everything as clear as possible, and obviously any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
We'll open the floor up to questions. Mr. Henry?
So, I think we've asked this before. Kelly Services, I believe, is the company we're using for substitutes.
Correct.
How is that tracking for our budget, and how is it comparing to years past financially? And maybe we can get just a brief report on how well it's working, but financially, where is it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to ask Ms. Brown to put together some information for you, but from a financial perspective, currently we're tracking as we anticipated. We are actually having a better fill rate.
That's what I was just about to tell you. I checked on that today, and we have had a better fill rate than we had for that vacancy.
And so it's working, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
And financially, how does that compare to, say, last year, our substitute line item versus this year?
I think we're going to see that we're not going to have the savings that we've had in the past when we couldn't get subs and we couldn't fill those positions. But I feel we budgeted adequately because we anticipated that. So we should be okay.
And then there's another item under tuition. It's tuition regular program. What is that for?
That covers a host of different tuitions for 6 to 6 magnet school, for Fairchild Wheeler, for FLAC, or any of the VOAG that our students are able to attend for regular education.
And do we, I might have asked this before, but do we have, I know there's an option for teachers to bring their kids out of district kids to school for tuition. Do we have any teacher or administrator related kids attending our school who are either paying or are getting a gratis type?
Nobody ever, to the best of my knowledge, ever received it free, but it was a discount. And we did have 2 people last year, and I don't believe we have any. I need to check if we have one, but I know that one is definitely not here any longer, so I will just double check that. If that one other teacher, I think they may have pulled their child as well, so we may not have any, but I'll confirm that.
Okay, thank you. There was a lot of discussion last year too, in the town, folks might be aware, but with our insurance, I think it's our property insurance, that was always an ongoing thing. We, like with most things you do with a budget, you predict the number, and especially with insurances, they go out to bid, and a number of things change, that change the premiums. Where are we with our insurance in that line item, and do we have any predictions for?
Yeah, we actually, as some of you may recall, and for those of you who aren't aware, we originally were at $220,000 for the town for our portion of the property insurance, including fire and liability for buildings. And it doubled last year, and we really felt we weren't given enough notice. And we tried to work with the town, and the town told us for this year the number to put in, and actually I am reaching out to the finance director just to confirm that number, but it's went from 220 and it's probably up to like 580,000. In fairness to the town, and I've said this repeatedly, they definitely showed us the spreadsheet, the breakdown. They are simply trying to charge us our fair share. Towns do it in different ways. Some towns do it through in kind. It's definitely an increase to our budget at a time when we could have lived without that increase, but I'm sure the town feels the same way. Nevertheless, I think the issue we had was that we weren't given adequate notice each time it increased. So we did get notice for fiscal year 25, and again, I just want to confirm that that is the number. And of course, they're waiting for their renewals as well.
But part of our increase was twofold. It was a reallocation from the town as to what percentages who pays. It was more charging us for what we were using. But it also, as everybody knows, insurances change, and they do their best as well to predict the correct number. But I think part of that increase came from just the unpredictability of the insurance industry.
Part of it did, but I do believe that, again, timeliness could have been a little better, because I know we get our final numbers a little bit earlier, but I did talk to Dawn Sabo, and she was absolutely right in that I believe they struggled a little because they were having trouble securing insurance. And the insurance industry right now is really challenging, to your point, Mike, and we struggled every year when we do our renewal, and particularly with cyber insurance. And we do try really hard to keep those costs down. We work with a really good broker who have been wonderful, and I think the town's working with the same one, but I will check again with Ms. Sabo to make certain that the number that we're putting in our budget is as close to accurate as she can give us at this time.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Villa?
Just to touch base on that, and you're 100% right. To add into that, there were dramatic increases to property insurance around town last year. That the town did get back in the early stages of the budget, and when we did get it, that's when we brought it obviously to the Board of Ed. But we weren't immune to that, meaning Stratford. Everybody. Last year hit the industry very, very hard. And I was even personally surprised when I saw some of the early projections. So I don't know how they work with other communities, but I know that Stratford had big increases across the board. So it wasn't just the Board of Ed.
Any other questions, Mr. Ryan?
Well, first of all, I want to mention, I hear a lot of concerns from those trying to watch that they can't hear them very well, so try to get the microphone close up when you talk. But Pam, thanks for the report. And most of the schools now have solar panels. Have we seen any benefit from that?
We've been watching that really carefully, and I will say maybe for the first time ever, we might be. I I'm not 100% positive that it's solely for that reason. And I've had a lot of conversations with Chris Kamiak in the past about possibly reducing the board's budget, and to his credit, he's always cautioned me about let's get a year or two under our belt. So to your point, I think, Bill, I would say yes, we're starting to.
Probably too soon to get a good feel.
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks.
Just to follow up on that as well, I have spoke to the mayor, just some initial conversations about the possibility of now they're using Honey Spot School and also the administration building here, using new roofs and solar panels on those two buildings. I don't know if we can get anywhere with it, but we just did broach the subject, and hopefully we can get that here. I think if it works and if it's a program that's successful, it brings a savings across the board. So I'll continue, and if it goes anywhere, I'll update the board at the time.
Pam, I have a quick question for you. I know at one of our last couple of meetings, we talked about the lock-in for a new energy resource for 12 months, beginning in November. Are we seeing any great impact? Are we seeing any great impact from that yet?
I'm not exactly clear what you're asking me. I apologize.
I think the town locked in with Constellation Energy Resources.
Oh, yes, they did, and the cost actually increased per kilowatt hour.
Right.
And again, currently, we are pretty much on target, but as I think I've mentioned a couple of times, we're usually 6 weeks behind in getting our invoices. So right now, we're probably only looking at 4 months of history to really evaluate. And until we get through the winter, because don't forget Stratford High School is heated by electricity, I think we're okay at the moment, and I think we will be okay. Part of that is we work with DBS, and they are the company that oversees some of our utilities and gives us our estimates. And they watch for anomalies as our invoices come in. And they explained that I was a little concerned because last year I felt we had too much money remaining in our utility accounts, and I wanted to understand why. And they did explain that they added in the Pura tax that had been planned. And I think it would have been inappropriate of them not to have done that, because we could have had a significant deficit in our accounts rather than some savings. So I think that is true for this year as well. I think the Pura tax is belabored a bit and maybe not in place. So that may help us a bit with that increase for the per kilowatt. But don't forget that increase is only on a portion of our total bill.
Right.
So it will impact us, but I don't think it will be that significant.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. The next item on our list is a grants update, and as most of you know, and some of you who are new to us may not know, our grants coordinator, Dr. Clemmie, passed away late in December. So I'd like to have a brief moment of silence to honor Dr. Clemmie. Thank you. We wish Dr. Clemmie's family and all those who knew him the best, and send our thoughts and prayers to them regularly. Ms. Mangini, I believe you may have some grant update to provide.
I can share with you, I don't have any financials at this point, but I can share with you that we've had a couple of offers for temporary help, and as you know, I always sing the praises of my incredible Susan Nicholson, because I really don't know what I would do without her. But she and I both obviously know grant management. We also know the EGMS state system. So we have been trying to work through the immediate urgencies and issues. And honestly, it does take time. As familiar as we are, it's still hunting and looking for things and figuring out where Kevin left off. Obviously, Kevin was wonderful and was really organized. So that's very helpful. But we're trying to figure out where we're at and where we can have help, because what we don't want to have happen is that we do bring someone in who perhaps is pulling at us more than we really can devote the time right now. So we're doing okay. We're doing the weekly drawdowns because the state changed that process last year. So we are able to keep our cash flow going because many of our grants pay for salaries, so that's a regular expense. And we do have a couple of reports that were overdue. We've reached out to the state, and they have been wonderfully helpful and understanding, and I think we've caught up on all of those as well. So we're not in terrible shape. We've already posted for the position, and hopefully we will get a good pool of applicants. We just never know, so we'll see how that works out. And we do hope to have a report for you next month. Again, my wonderful Susan is working on a template right now, so we should be in much better shape. So thank you for your patience with us.
Any questions for Ms. Mangini? Moving right along, we're going to turn it over to Ms. Borges for a special ed PBS report.
And Ms. Mangini already filled you in on this, and last month, when we had a meeting in December, I gave you guys a heads up that we were gonna show a deficit. Please remember, special education is like a roller coaster. Okay, we encumber the money, a student may leave. More students may move in. Currently, we've had a steady increase of students with exceptionalities entering our district. We have gone up by 10 to 15 students each meeting. And that has put us in a place where we have unplanned expenses for out-of-district placements and transportation. Those could change. It could look better next month. We could bring some students back as we get to know them and think they may fit one of our programs. So that is really where we're looking at, but that is why you are seeing the large deficit that Ms. Mangini spoke about earlier. I do think we're going to be okay. As she said, savings from unfilled positions should be able to cover those, and it's a roller coaster, so we don't need to move the money yet because I know already that we have kids coming in and out, and it will be different for next month.
Any questions for Ms. Borges? Mr. Henry?
In your report, it talks about, it says this account is now the transportation?
Yeah.
Due to transportation in and out of district? Is it just for one singular?
So transportation covers whether we are driving you to an out-of-district placement or whether we have to provide special transportation to get you to our buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And some students do require that.
Okay. It's just the way that it's written, it says that the transportation in and out of district.
Yeah, so in district our transportation and our transportation that drives students out of district.
So it's not just a single
Right.
individual that.
Right.
Okay. And a lot of these kids, I'm guessing, are coming from out of state. And you told us before, but you guys look at whether or not they're classified or can be reclassified as regular ed or students.
So we review all IEPs. There's a 30-day review when a student registers. We look through the recommendations in that IEP. We make the appropriate changes to meet our needs. Every state is different. Every state writes their IEPs a little bit different. So when we get a student from New York, we get a New York IEP. We have 30 days to get to know that student, look what's in that IEP, and then have a PPT to make changes for what works for us. But to the best of our ability, we need to follow the law and honor what's in the IEP that came with that student. So if the student came with an IEP that stated an out-of-district placement, then those are honored for at least the first 30 days.
And well, for those who don't, you actively review those and
So everybody who registers here, if you have a student who registers with an IEP, that IEP comes to me. I am the first person to read it. It goes to then a supervisor or principal or whatever school or designation needs to review as well.
Mr. O'Brien?
So I'm thinking, how do we compare to other communities as far as our special ed program? Do we have a very good
We sure do.
reputation, so people move here just for that reason?
Somebody says that. I don't think people actually do that, but we have a wonderful reputation. You have very hardworking teachers. We have amazing continuum of service that we have been able to expand over the years to provide services for all of our students so that they can be part of our community and part of our school community in their least restrictive environment. I don't think anyone looks around and goes, I'm going to choose here because of that, but it is a point of pride.
Mhm. Well, I just think back to a neighbor I had who had a child who was deaf, and they moved to Cheshire because they had a great program for deaf children. Even he gave up a 5-minute commute to
That is
benefit them,
possible.
so.
It is possible, and I think if someone looked into Stratford, they would be proud of how we work with our students with exceptionalities. So if they are looking around, they might say, yeah, this is a great town.
Of course, I have a lot of history there too. I have a sister that was a special ed teacher, and a nephew who went through Bunnell and was a special ed student, so. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Borges? Back to Ms. Mangini for the food services report.
Okay, we caught you up this month with a program report for September and October. So I will just kind of focus on the October, the more recent one. And as you can see, our ending fund balance is approximately 1.2 million. And we do have pending state reimbursements. Again, just keep in mind that we, for the first time in years, have actually had a fund balance in our school lunch program. And as a result, we work with the state. We can't keep more than 3 months of operating costs within our fund balance. So I reported out last May that we did come up with a spend down plan, and we are working on that. So all of this money that is reflected here isn't necessarily available. We have replaced a lot of equipment, which is really advantageous to us because we have already overspent our budget for repairs. And we have struggled with that over the last few years. So hopefully those costs will start to decrease because we are replacing equipment, which was long overdue. And in addition, I just want to share with you once again about our food service consultant that we contracted with a few years ago who helped us through the RFP process, but she's also here visiting all the schools periodically. She comes in and she walks through, she makes certain that things are being done appropriately, not only in compliance with state and federal guidelines, but also with our RFP and things that we required Sodexo to do through that process. And she's been providing reports. She's been very pleased with what she has seen. And our food service director through Sodexo, Karen Rosa, is absolutely wonderful to work with, and she really does care about the system, school system, and our kids. So she's very excited that we are getting a lot of new equipment. I think the workers within the cafeterias are pleased. We're doing condiment stations and just all kinds of things, just make it more appealing and hopefully continue to increase with our students actually taking our lunches. So the program's going really well. I'm very pleased with it.
Great, thank you.
So in your report, month of October, just so maybe everybody understands, but for a lunch program, you have a number of 101,200 about. Is that how many lunches we give out on a monthly basis?
You're looking at the participation report?
Lunch
Yes,
participation,
okay,
yes.
I found it. Yes, that is. Those are the actual meal counts for the month.
So then, so in the month of October, we give out about 102,000 lunches and about 50,000 breakfasts?
Correct.
Breakfasts. Yes?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. O'Brien?
Pam, can you give us one example of a non-controllable expenditure?
The non-controllable expenditures would include items such as perhaps, I'm trying to think of something from the invoice that I've seen, but it would be something like maybe just paper goods, something that we need and we really can't control the number of, saran wrap or tin foil.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Ms. Mangini on the food services report? No? Okay. Ms. Mangini, one last report for you, the enrollment and registration update.
Certainly.
as you can see, we do continue to increase our enrollment, and we are currently up by about 19 students from last month, and that fits with what Ms. Borges just reported to you. And it has been steady, and I think we saw the same scenario play out last year, where we started off in the beginning of the school year a lot less than we had in June, but we catch up throughout the year, and again, that just supports the transiency that we do see. But we are being very careful, particularly at the elementary level. On placements, we always try to maintain students within their neighborhood schools when possible, but we do have those contractual class sizes that we must adhere to as well. So we do take all of that into consideration. But we also, I should mention, we do have a new registration system that is going to be put in place. You may have heard that we did struggle a little bit in the past because the system was set up, and the one that the district purchased was probably about 7 years ago, and it was the lower level of what was available, and I totally understand the decision that was made at that time, because I'm not too sure, we were like right on that line, which way I would have gone. I probably would have gone with the less expensive one too, and I'm sure Heather can attest to that, because I am very conservative, but nevertheless, we had problems with it that I know had gone to the board level as well as the town level, where parents had to actually submit a request to register, wait for an email to come back to them, and then set up through the portal an actual account. This new system, I've sat in, I've played, I've actually registered my 40-year-old daughter as a first grader, but I wanted to be that parent to see how to work through it, and it really is a much cleaner, much easier to follow process. You don't have to wait for that second email to get moving. And we're hoping to have that actually operational by early February. That coincides with our kindergarten registration. So we're excited about that. A lot of people have put a lot of effort into it.
Good to hear. Speaking of kindergarten registration, maybe Ms. Borges or maybe able to answer how the new laws in effect are going to affect our incoming kindergarten class and the budget going forward.
Sure. So beginning with 24-25 school year, the Connecticut General Statute changed. So children need to turn 5 before September 1st in order to enter kindergarten, which really essentially makes children need to stay another year in preschool. They are able to apply for a waiver. Any parent who has a child whose birthday is between September 1st and December 31st, that child is turning 5 and they want a waiver, should send me an email. We set up a screening process to talk about readiness for that. That is just a temporary thing that the state is allowing for this year. So September 1st is now the cutoff date. We currently have quite a list of people requesting waivers. But it will affect, it may lower our kindergarten enrollment, it may increase our preschool enrollment. And our preschool enrollment's already high. I don't know if you have noticed, but it's higher than past years. We have 223 students currently in our preschool, which is a significant amount higher than we've had in the past. So it is going to impact a little bit of what we do and how we do it. Because you also have to remember, kindergarten teachers can't just be bumped down to teach preschool. They have different certifications. So it will be a little bit of a challenge. We have a beautiful waiver system in place. They can send me an email, I'll send them the information, and we are looking to do the kindergarten waivers around February, because we understand that parents need to request their spot to stay in preschool.
So each of those students will be individually assessed and...
Yep, 3 ways. We take your view as a parent, we take, if you're currently in a preschool, we'll take your preschool teacher's view, and then we do an assessment, and those 3 go together to look at whether readiness is appropriate, you have the appropriate readiness to move when you're younger than the age requirement.
Ms. Lance?
If the parent doesn't agree with what the district decides, is there a process they can go through to
Deal?
Yep, it's all detailed in the letter that we sent out as a blast, and I have a copy of, so when parents are questioning, they send me an email, and I'll send them a new copy of that letter, and the detailed process is in there.
Great. Mr. Carter?
I have one question for Ms. Benji. I'm just curious, I'm not sure, the STEPS programs at Chapel and at Flood, are the students that are in the STEPS program included in the totals there, or are they considered So that
They're
there's
in-
total then.
in their
Okay,
total.
thank you, districts, thank you.
Then
Mr. O'Brien?
for Heather, what's the max that you could accommodate at Victoria Soto for preschool?
If we added preschool classrooms, we have 14 classrooms. Okay, you have preschool is 20 kids per classroom. So,
I'll do the math.
thank you, I
I think it
appreciate
has
that.
a lot to do with staffing and things like that as well though, right?
It has a lot to do with staffing, it also has a lot to do with our current model, so we actually double that right now because we do half day. We do morning and afternoon session for the ELS program, so you can have 20 students in the morning and 20 in the afternoon. But really full day is what we're looking for, so.
And the Strive program, which is a great program, it says for those 18 to 21, did I hear that's been bumped up to 23?
Sure has, it's to 23 now.
Right, and now it is officially now?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll
Thank
make it
you.
23.
And thank you, we should change that.
Mr. Hennis?
Yeah, so, the Strive program, that is currently housed at Bertha?
Yes.
Okay, and, we've added some programs over at Honey Spot. Are those included in the existing enrollment numbers? Because a lot of those kids are coming out of individual schools.
They're still tied to schools,
Okay.
so they're included in your Grinnell numbers, your Stratford High numbers, your Worcester numbers, Flood numbers, because that's a secondary program.
And can you just explain for everybody quickly what's happening at Honey Spot? What you're
Sure.
doing there?
Sure, we have our alternative instructional placement is held at Honey Spot School. We noticed last year that we struggled with attendance, especially for students that were receiving exclusionary discipline. So if you were a student who received a 10-day out-of-school suspension, you were home. And then we worked with our police department to find out that sometimes when students are home, more poor decisions were being made and kids were not being educated. So we created an alternative program where if you are out of school suspended, you now can come get an education in a different environment, which is still considered a suspension. However, you are able to do your work, you are in attendance, you are marked present, and we have Project Uplift there. Our Project Uplift team is a stop grant, so it's not part of your operating budget, but it's part of a federal grant, where we have 3 mental health professionals, we have a social worker, a school counselor, and a school psychologist who help the students create reentry plans to go back to their buildings. The goal is to make sure they're not repeating whatever act got them to AIP in the first place. In addition to that program that we have running there, we are also running our homebound tutoring. We found last year, after going to virtual tutoring, that students were not engaging. And when students didn't log on to do their tutoring, we were increasing our gap. So what we do now is you come in person and you receive your tutoring in person for actually a longer amount of time, and it is a savings. So instead of paying one person to tutor for 2 hours a day, you can come for a 5-hour day and get tutoring with other students around you. And we have had to use some transportation for that, so that has taken up some of our transportation to make sure we can get the students to and from. In addition, if you are a student who had exclusionary discipline and you didn't show up, you may get a home visit, because we have our team there that's able to say, we care, we want to see you here. So you may have a team show up to your house and say, you know, you're supposed to be with us. And then they may call transportation and say, Susan, we're ready, could you please come pick up the student, they're ready to come learn. So we do think it's really positive and productive. And then in the evening, we have continuing education running out of that building as well, and their enrollment is up.
Any additional questions for Ms. Borges or Ms. Mangini?
Yes. It's more Heather. Put chocolate up there, Ms. Mangini. Ms. Borges, you mentioned, right, in your report that 64 students with exceptionalities have come into the district, and it's still growing as we go. And I'm sure through all of everything that we've been through over the last couple of years and different interventions, more and more students we're finding are qualifying for special education that we have and have been.
17%.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, because I'm looking at like the numbers in each school of like, you know, special education and classroom size, like are we consistently monitoring, like, because I know classrooms have to stay balanced, right? So that they don't go over a certain percentage of special ed versus regular education. Is that being consistently monitored? I figured. And then with that, Are we looking at, or are we going to be doing adjusting, like, I'm just thinking of all these, like 64 off the top of my head, right? We can't spread them out however we choose, right? It's based on where they end up being. Are we monitoring and watching the amount of service hours for our providers, because I don't want to overburden our special education teachers,
We are.
and making sure that we are servicing all of our children?
We are, so I have a spreadsheet in which I pull, every couple weeks, I'll pull the spreadsheet just to look at the differences in the hours, how much the hours have increased. Remember, we also do a beautiful job and often decrease hours. So we may have students go up, but our teachers are working with them, and then they have closed those gaps and their hours decrease. But we do monitor all of that, and honestly, Stratford's doing much better this year. If you remember, last year, we had Second Helene in 34%, right? Second Helene is down to 18%, almost in line with the state at 17%. We want all of our schools to be, we as a district are at 17%, so we can't expect our schools to be much below that. But we want everyone in the teens, not up in the 20s. And so we did some shifting of programs in order to make those balance a little better, and we are doing a much better job of that this year. But yes, we monitor all those hours, and they do go up. And some of those things are reflected in next year's budget. You'll see as I put in requests, because I let Ms. Mangini know, hours went up, I need this.
Right. Thank you. Any additional questions? Other business, anything old, new? Ms. Schreiber?
So, for the board members, we will, obviously, we have our board meeting on January 22nd. The staff does give their administrative reports. If the non-board members, if between now and then you're reviewing this information and you find some things you'd like to ask questions about, forward them to either myself or Ms. Bedell, and we'll make sure they get on the record and asked at our full board meeting.
And going forward, like Ms. Mangini said, we will have this report in advance so that you're able to review that in advance of the meeting, so.
Okay, our next.
One other question, can you tell me how budgeting is done for field trips? Does each school have their own budget for that, or do you have one?
The majority of field trips are self-sustaining, so there are monies that are collected by the students, and that is handled by each school. However, we do field trips that are tied to curriculum, and those we pay for, whether it's a museum locally, we do pay for the transportation for those, and those are in your general operating budget.
Okay, so I'll give a plug, because the Stratford Veterans Museum offers field trips, and when I write the grants for the museum, and in those grants I request money to pay for field trips. So we are subsidizing field trips, and it's been a great thing. We had 2 groups from Franklin School come in December, and it was incredible, their behavior and how much they enjoyed it and how much they learned from it, and we learned from them. So it was, and we paid for the whole bus, and it's fun to.
Thank you.
So keep it in mind.
We will.
My son enjoyed one of those field trips very much.
They're coming again in March.
Good. Okay, so there's no other questions or comments or thoughts. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 5th, which is part of the budget workshop series that there is a whole list of meetings for the month of February. And we will see you then. So this meeting is adjourned at 7:25. Thank you.
Motion to
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Jordan, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
I know.
Thanks, Kristen.
Pass.